Right, we're continuing in a moment here on In Focus, and the conversation is really around the election campaign promises. The Patriotic Alliance saying now it will fight for the return of the Word of God in schools. The Constitution does allow for religious observance, but clearly states that such are conducted on an equitable basis and are free on, they have to be voluntary. Now, here to unpack this issue, we'll be joined in a moment, hopefully, by Patriotic Alliance's leader, Gayton McKenzie. But we also have the spokesperson for teacher union SADTU, Xolani Fakude, as well as a leader of Al-jama-ah, Ganief Hendricks, to respond to some of these promises that, of course, politicians will make along the line in this time of campaigning. Let's start with you, Mr. Hendricks. Good evening, and thank you very much for your time. These are promises, of course, that parties would make along their campaign trail. Do you make much of this particular promise?
Look, it has no relevance in municipal elections. You mentioned earlier on that it is a constitutional imperative. The national government, they allocate money to the province to carry out that constitutional mandate. And it has absolutely nothing to do with municipal elections. So maybe, it is a call that many people would support, but certainly not as part of a campaign for municipal elections. That call is out of place. It should be when there is national and provincial elections. It would be quite a noble call to make, and Al-jama-ah will certainly support it. But we are not silly enough to use that as an election ploy for municipal elections.
Let's have Gayton come in then and give us his view. Gayton, good to have you with us, finally able to connect there. Gayton, I mean, initially in my first conversation with you, one of your promises, of course, was you come in at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. by 3 p.m., all illegal immigrants will be out of the country, or at least you would have attempted to do that. You have found another rallying point now as far as an election promise for these upcoming local government elections. Is this something that you have canvassed with the communities that are promising to give you their votes?
Yes, you know, it's not only something that we've canvassed with the communities, only for the vote. It's something that we as the Patriotic Alliance believe in. And when I switch on now, I couldn't help but hear the gentleman saying that it's a silly thing that we're busy doing because this is a national government issue and not local government election. Did I hear correctly?
Yes, it should have said not a rallying point for local government.
That's the problem with Al-jama-ah. We're talking about God here. God cannot wait. God doesn't have local or government. God must be here all the time. So if he says that's the problem, that the people that say they represent God in the parliament, that's why we are where we are today while they are still there. You cannot come here and say we are silly for wanting to bring God. God should have been in the schools, should never have been taken out of our schools. So to say to us, let the Al-jama-ah wait, but we will not wait for our God. They don't understand. We will bring God back. For us, it's not a local, it's not a national issue. It is a now issue. So you can call it silly. It is never silly to try to bring God back into schools, no matter the time. That's New World Order thinking.
Why do you think this is an appropriate moment to do it? Why do you emphasize that as one of the things that I suppose you're saying will restore communities and society?
Let me make you an example. I'm in a place called Calvinia in the Northern Cape as I'm speaking to you. They have a huge problem here with children committing suicide in the schools. Now you see the children are all under stress, they are depressed. But if the children had what we had in those years, the Word of God, they would understand. And if you understand the Word of God, you'll understand that there's always hope. You will understand that you can always go to God. You can go on your knees and ask for things because children are not exposed to those biblical teachings. Hence, they see suicide. So I believe, I'm just making you one example where I am now. So there's never been a more appropriate time to have God in our lives, because when you take God out of schools, who are you making space for? But we complain about Satanism, which is becoming very rife, because we've taken God out of our schools. Our children won't get God.
How do you see that, though, working in a constitution that says all religions should be given an equal space, equitable amount of airtime, so to speak?
You know, we are not against the Muslim faith being in fact, we promote that. We are not against any faith. We just say, whichever God you believe in, you should have, our children should be taught in schools. Because let me tell you, this whole thing only affects poor children, this decision. My kids are in private schools, and they get taught the ways of God in those schools. But this thing is only for poor kids. So Ganief says it's a silly thing because probably his kids are probably also in a private school or his grandkids. Now, we are not talking for ourselves here. We are talking for all the other kids. You know, when you are a government, you have to listen to the people. 80% of the people in this country are Christians. They want the God. They want us to have a God-centered government. And you have to listen to the people. My last holiday before I went before COVID, I went to Qatar. And the Qataris are unapologetic about their God. Ganief will not go and say this silly things, he calls us silly, this nonsense he speaks here. He will not say it there in Qatar. He will never dare say when he goes to Saudi Arabia. Now he comes here and tells us about we are being silly. Let him try to do that. They'll hang him right there. So I'm saying, let me be silly. God will come back into the schools. Let the PA takes over. You will see our children will be taught. We will fight for our God. Casinos are open. Casinos are allowed thousands of people. Churches only allowed 50 people. And we must not be told we are silly for calling back our God from a supposedly godly man.
All right, we'll get a response from Ganief in just a moment, as well as Xolani Fakude with us tonight here on In Focus as the debate gets heated up. Gayton McKenzie of Patriotic Alliance, Xolani Fakude of SADTU, as well as Al-jama-ah, Ganief Hendricks. Stay with us. In Focus continues in a moment. And back with you tonight, and we are in our schools in our conversation as we engage Gayton McKenzie of Patriotic Alliance, Xolani Fakude of SADTU, as well as Al-jama-ah's Ganief Hendricks. Patriotic Alliance saying voters in will bring God back into our schools. Xolani, this, of course, is what the Patriotic Alliance is saying it was silly in the first place to remove God from our schools. In fact, the word of God from our schools, to be quite precise. How are teachers, dealing with the kind of social ills that are currently pervasive in our schools, and do they believe a return of religious instruction, particularly Christianity and the Word of God, could be the answer to respond to those challenges?
Thank you very much, Thabo. Firstly, let me greet you. Let me greet the viewers as well, and also my fellow panelists, Mr. Hendricks and Mr. McKenzie. And thank you really for asking that question. In fact, as a union, Thabo, we would be very, very quick to say that it actually humbles us that indeed now we are having such a national conversation, because what it certainly means is that there is an awareness from all other players within the body politic of the country that indeed we've got a particular crisis within the education space. However, Thabo, we strongly believe that perhaps we would be missing an opportunity here to really go into the deeper cracks of the issues if we're to limit it to just a religion. We believe, Thabo, that we should have an education system that equally focuses on the kind of values and ethics that we want young South Africans to actually exhibit at a later stage. We're talking of the values of Ubuntu, for instance. So we are saying that religion in itself is already a protected practice in our constitution. However, we are saying that at the level of the school, we might find ourselves hitting a particular cul-de-sac, in that when you bring a religion, for instance, which I've already said is already protected by the constitution, which denomination, for instance, do you then put above the other one?
Yeah.
Yes, I hear Mr. McKenzie, for instance, he is saying that 80% of South Africans are Christian. Well, fair. I don't think there is anyone who can argue against that. But let's also be honest and say that if indeed that were the case, when we talk of the political space, I'm sure that parties like the SADTU, for instance, would by now be the largest party in the national legislature. So I'm saying that we need to be able to divorce these two particular conversations. So what we are saying, Thabo, is that let us transform our education system. Let us not have an education system that is so obsessed with just ticking the box and assessments and sort of forgets as to how then we deal with the nuts and bolts of society. But now to answer your question directly, how do we deal with the ills that we see? Yes, teachers actually are overwhelmed. The system is overwhelmed with what you see. Actually, what you see, Thabo, on social media is the tip of the iceberg. There are many other underreported cases. Just today, in the township Philippi, in the Western Cape, I just saw a viral video right now where a teacher was killed by a learner in the school premises. So what we need to do, we need to emphasize on how education is a societal matter. Yeah. Let us all make sure that we can all play our respective roles in making sure that our schools can be safe haven. Then we can start having a proper conversation.
A cul-de-sac, would that be with regards to, as you're putting it, in terms of time allocation, or will that be a cul-de-sac with regards to a belief system of the teachers themselves? Will they have a challenge with religious instruction?
Well, you would remember, Thabo, that firstly, when we are trained as teachers nowadays, we're not necessarily trained in biblical studies anymore, for instance. So firstly, that is one particular barrier of pedagogy that you would need to start dealing with. So certainly, there would be some limitations to that particular issue. And like I am saying, Thabo, that all religious groupings are protected by the constitution of the country. Now, we are saying that a country as diverse as ours, Thabo, that is why we always talk of embracing our diversity. A country as diverse as ours from a cultural point of view, from a religious point of view, even though there's a particular religion, denomination that might be more common than the others, then what happens about those? So we're saying that we are going to run at an issue whereby constitutional rights might start somehow be dented. And sort of then we are using education for the wrong purposes, therefore, because what we are saying, Thabo, at the center of the issue, that education must speak to their proper value in itself, in the curriculum, proper values, proper ethics, without necessarily limiting it to religion, because then, like we're saying, Thabo, we might indeed reach a cul-de-sac.
Ganief, it's not silliness. God cannot just be limited to national. In fact, the silliness we're seeing in our schools, in fact, not even silliness, crime and serious cases of murder being seen in our school is something that really needs God.
With respect, you also missed the point. You know, if the Patriotic Alliance comes to power in the city of Cape Town, God forbid, there's absolutely nothing they can do for what is the provincial matter. So that is really so silly politicking, because I don't think anyone believes what they say, that when they come to power, they will bring God into the schools. God is already in the schools. You know, I help run one of the schools in the most poorest areas, which is in the Beacon Valley. And, because most of the students there of the Islamic faith, they pray during the day, they get breaks on Fridays, they do the congregational prayer. At many other schools, school principals allow us to use the schools for madrasas, and then also Bible studies is one of the subjects. Government pays for every student a pro rata fee for Bible studies, and that comes from the provincial government, and that comes from national government. And that's why I told respected Gayton McKenzie that Al-jama-ah will support him at the provincial level and the national level, because that's the only place you can do something about it. You can do absolutely nothing at the municipal level. That is very silly. He doesn't know his politics. He doesn't know what a municipality does and the 3 tiers of government, and there's going to be a 4th tier later on. So there's absolutely nothing that he can do when he becomes the new mayor of Cape Town, God forbid.
There you are, Gayton McKenzie, 2 cul-de-sacs that you're going to have to deal with. There's absolutely nothing you can do at local government elections about this. You can make the promise all you want, but you're going to meet a challenge when you get there. But the other cul-de-sac that you're going to have to deal with are the teachers themselves who are saying, well, look, we are here for education and not necessarily for religious instruction. So if you want to instill values, whatever good values that you say can be derived from the Word of God, put those within the education system itself.
All right, let me just make 3 quick points. I think the first point is I want to say to my learned friend Ganief, he should tread very carefully to say I know nothing about politics, because it's very hard. It's not nice for a person that gets beaten by the PA all the time. So he gets beaten. We've been beating them in every by-election. We've met them in the past 4 by-elections. So for him to say we don't know politics, so he gets beaten by people that don't know politics. So I shudder to think what the people that do know politics will do to him. So yeah, let's leave that one there. The second issue is, you see, Thabo, here's the first one. This country is being governed by the African National Congress. Every rally of the ANC, they have an imam there, they have bishops there, they have different denominations and different faiths praying before the rally starts, everyone. Now, our leaders want the grace of God at their rallies, but they don't want the grace of God. They don't want the grace of God for our children. That's my first point. Why, if religion is not so important, why do they have all the religious factors before they start their rallies? Secondly, they all go to churches every week. You're going to see them in churches. So if religion is not that important, what you're going to see Ramaphosa and them kneeling in front, all of us, including myself, kneeling in front of bishops and apostles. Thirdly, you cannot allow Mr. Ganief to come on here and insult our intelligence so greatly by saying religion is already in schools. You see, that's the problem with privilege. Religion is not, it's not legislated. That religion is not in schools. If religion was in schools, if I listen to what you are saying, why is it that you say we will deal with it as a national issue? So why will we deal with it as a national issue if it's already, if there's nothing to deal with religion now? So, and my last point I want to make, you see, South Africans, we are being underestimated in this country. The majority of people here are Christians in this country. And as I've mentioned, as a seasoned traveler, Mr. Ganief will never dare to make that statement in Saudi Arabia or not even here in South Sudan. He will never say it's no time now to discuss religion. He will never say that the Muslim children, we must emulate Muslims because the children go to madrasa. Yeah. That's why he's so nonchalant.
But are you comparing apples with apples, Gayton? We are a constitutional democracy, and are you comparing?
No, I'm coming to that. That's my last point about constitutional democracy. Yeah. So, Mr. Ganief, Muslims go to the madrasa. The children get the word from the mighty Quran. Rightly so. So, allow us also for our children to also get the word of God. Then the last one about the constitution. You see, I keep on in this country, and this is my belief. In this country, you all talk about the world-class constitution. That is a world new order constitution that we have in this country. Because the constitution will not make teachers beg for increase year after year. A constitution will not make our children be derived from getting the word of God. A good constitution. A good constitution will not make the majority of youth be unemployed. So I cannot be told that the constitution says this as if this constitution is sacrosanct in my belief when it comes to God. And then the last point about Gayton Fakude, I just want to say something to him. It's very disingenuous of him to say, it's very disingenuous of him to say if religion was so big, ACDP and Al-jama-ah would have been very big parties. I mean, not every teacher is a member of SADTU. So, you know, if every teacher to be a member of SADTU, SADTU would have been the biggest union. So I don't think it's a very good example he should be making. People have choices in this country. So all I'm saying is that let him say, he says God forbids. How can God forbid the party that wants to bring them back to govern? How can does this man think properly when he speaks this matters. He says, God forbids, we don't take over. Because he's scared. We are going to take over. We are going to bring God back, and nobody will stop us. And if you don't know how to bring God back on the local level, watch the PA. They'll advise us.
Let's leave it there, Gayton. We're out of time. I appreciate you all for coming. Thank you very much. Xolani Fakude, Ganief Hendricks, as well as Gayton McKenzie. It is that time of the year. People are hitting the campaign trail with all sorts of promises, and these debates are what keeps it, of course, lively and allows you to make the choices that you need to make. Certainly encouraging you to go out there and make your mark.